why the building is.
Well, we were advised by the attorneys to close the building. The building shouldn't be open.
I think they take this serious. I think it's a big game to them, and they don't understand that the more confusion and the more back and forth that we do, you don't want.
Intro 1. Sure, to rewrite the detailed text into 4,500 words, I will break down the main events and expand on key sections, adding more context, analysis, and narrative depth. Let's begin. The political scene in Thorin Township has become a chaotic, toxic battlefield, marked by bitter personal feuds, accusations of financial mismanagement, and a failure to address the pressing needs of the community. At the heart of this turmoil stands Mayor Tiffany Henyard, whose leadership has been marked by controversy, high drama, and a growing sense of dysfunction. What should have been a routine meeting of the township's Board of Trustees recently escalated into an unprecedented political spectacle. The stakes were high, but the outcome was bleak. No progress was made, and the divides between Henyard and her critics deepened, further destabilizing the community's already fragile governance. At the core of this crisis is the ongoing feud between Mayor Henyard and the Board of Trustees, which has morphed from political disagreement into an all-out war for control. The tension in the room was palpable during a particularly heated meeting, with no one willing to back down. Accusations flew in every direction, and finger-pointing became the norm. The meeting was no longer a forum for debate or discussion about the future of the township. It had become a political theater, with no resolution in sight. When the meeting began, the mood was anything but cordial. The township, plagued by financial instability, crumbling infrastructure, and a lack of effective leadership, was on the brink of crisis. As residents gathered to discuss important issues, such as the renewal of insurance policies vital to the functioning of the township's services, Mayor Henyard set the combative tone. Known for her fiery rhetoric and unyielding leadership style, Henyard wasted no time in launching into an attack against the Board of Trustees. Henyard had already been embroiled in a month-long controversy over her handling of the township's finances, and she quickly turned her criticisms toward the trustees, accusing them of neglecting their duties and putting the community at risk. Her words were sharp, and her accusations were pointed, as she accused the trustees of mismanagement, corruption, and even extravagance. In her eyes, they were not only failing in their current responsibilities, but had also been absent during previous crucial decisions that had affected the future of the township. The meeting had barely started, and already it was clear that no common ground was going to be reached. The tone was set. This was a battle, not a conversation. Henyard's attacks on the trustees were not just about policy disagreements. They were personal, and they set the stage for a series of emotional and volatile exchanges. Instead of focusing on the township's needs, it was becoming increasingly clear that the meeting was going to be about power struggles, accusations, and finger-pointing. As the meeting progressed, what had initially been an air of tension turned into full-blown chaos. The accusations became more heated, and the lines between personal grievances and political issues blurred. Henyard continued to escalate the rhetoric, accusing the trustees of abandoning the community and failing to take action on vital issues. She painted herself as the lone warrior fighting for the people, while the trustees were portrayed as a group of obstructionists who were either too incompetent or too corrupt to carry out their duties. Her remarks about the trustees' failure to attend meetings or engage with the community only added fuel to the fire. It became clear that Henyard was not interested in discussing policy or finding solutions. She was interested in confrontation, in making the trustees appear inept and out of touch. To Henyard, the stakes were personal. She framed herself as the only one who cared about the future of the township, and anyone who opposed her was an obstacle to progress. One angry attendee watching the spectacle unfold compared the proceedings to an old-fashioned wrestling showdown. It was a fitting description, as the meeting quickly became a dramatic display of power and emotion, complete with exaggerated rhetoric, passionate speeches, and dramatic walkouts. For those familiar with Henyard's volatile style, this was just another episode in an ongoing series of political theatrics that had characterized her time in office. It was hard to deny the sense of drama that pervaded the room, but for many residents, the drama was not entertaining, it was disturbing. The township, struggling with significant financial issues and a lack of insurance, needed decisive leadership, not a political spectacle. And yet, that's exactly what they got. Despite the growing chaos, Henyard remained resolute. She stood firm in her beliefs, and her rhetoric only became more intense as the night wore on. As the meeting descended into disorder, Henyard continued to attack the trustees for their perceived failures, while framing herself as a leader who was not afraid to stand up for the community, even if that meant clashing with those in power. She argued that the trustees were undermining her efforts to make positive changes for the township, and she accused them of being part of an entrenched establishment determined to block her progress. In a moment of defiance, Henyard declared, "If you want your job, I'll do it for you." This statement, met with applause from her supporters in the room, only intensified the criticism she received from her detractors. Critics saw it as a blatant power grab, a sign that Henyard was willing to overstep her authority in order to secure greater control. Some even suggested that this statement was indicative of a growing authoritarian streak within Henyard's leadership style, a refusal to compromise or cooperate with those who disagreed with her. Despite the increasing tension and the emotional outbursts from both sides, Henyard stood her ground. She refused to back down despite being accused of mismanaging the township's finances, wasting taxpayer money on unnecessary projects, and neglecting the needs of the community. She continued to frame herself as a warrior for the people, unyielding in her pursuit of what she believed was best for the township, even if it meant going to war with the very people who were supposed to be working alongside her. For many, however, this defiant attitude was starting to feel less like strong leadership and more like an unwillingness to engage in meaningful dialogue. Henyard's refusal to listen to her critics, her unwillingness to compromise, and her increasingly combative tone were beginning to alienate even her supporters. As one trustee stormed out of the meeting, slamming the door behind them in frustration, it became clear that the rift between Henyard and the Board of Trustees was only growing wider. One of the most pressing issues discussed at the meeting was the township's ongoing insurance crisis. Since December 1st, the township had been without insurance, putting both the township staff and residents at significant risk. With the township's ability to secure necessary coverage at stake, this should have been the issue that united the board in a common cause. Instead, it became yet another point of contention between Henyard and the trustees. Henyard accused the trustees of being negligent in their responsibilities, failing to renew the township's insurance and putting essential services at risk. She went so far as to accuse them of ignoring the urgent needs of the community, stating that they had failed to show up to prior meetings to address the issue. She implored homeowners to take action, to speak directly with their trustees, and to demand that they fulfill their duties. However, Henyard's critics quickly responded, accusing her of using the insurance issue as a political tool to further her own agenda. They argued that Henyard was using the crisis to manipulate public opinion and to paint the trustees as incompetent. By turning the insurance renewal into a political football, Henyard was deflecting attention away from the real issues: the township's financial mismanagement and her inability to lead effectively. As the arguments escalated, it became clear that no meaningful solutions were going to be reached that night. Instead of working together to resolve the township's insurance crisis, Henyard and the trustees were locked in a bitter dispute that seemed to have no end. The trustees accused Henyard of prioritizing her personal political agenda over the needs of the community, while Henyard accused them of being more interested in protecting their own positions than in fulfilling their responsibilities. The meeting's most explosive moments came when Henyard clashed with trustee Chris Gonzalez, once one of her closest allies. Gonzalez, who had grown increasingly frustrated with Henyard's leadership, became one of her harshest critics. His alliance with State Senator Napoleon Harris, one of Henyard's most powerful political opponents, only fueled the animosity between the two. Gonzalez accused Henyard of using the insurance crisis to further her own political ambitions, and in a moment of anger, he declared, "They can't beat me, so they're trying to block me at every turn." This revelation of personal animus only served to deepen the divide between the mayor and the trustees. What was supposed to be a discussion about the future of the township had devolved into a personal battle for control. Henyard's response was predictable. She framed herself as the victim of a conspiracy, claiming that political forces were working to undermine her leadership and prevent her from helping the people of Thorin Township. As the confrontation between Henyard and Gonzalez intensified, the room grew more divided, and the prospects of reaching a resolution seemed increasingly remote. As the meeting wore on, Henyard's controversial financial decisions continued to be a focal point of discussion. The township's budget was in disarray, and Henyard's leadership had come under intense scrutiny for what many saw as financial mismanagement. Among the most criticized expenditures was Henyard's lavish spending on personal projects, including expensive trips, unnecessary decorations, and other high-cost items that critics saw as a misuse of taxpayer money. Henyard's supporters, however, continued to defend her, claiming that she was standing up for the people and pushing back against a corrupt system. But as the township's financial woes deepened, even some of Henyard's allies began to question her leadership. One employee expressed regret at ever nominating her for office, noting how the township had worsened under her administration. The lack of transparency and accountability in Henyard's leadership style further fueled discontent among the township's residents. The ongoing investigations into the mayor's financial dealings were seen by many as just another example of her inability to govern effectively. Henyard continued to frame the investigation as a politically motivated attack, but the mounting evidence of financial mismanagement had left many questioning whether she was truly fit to lead. The political chaos in Thorin Township had reached a tipping point. The prolonged infighting between Henyard and the trustees had left the township in a state of paralysis, unable to move forward on crucial issues like the insurance renewal, public safety, and infrastructure. As the community continued to deteriorate, residents grew increasingly disillusioned with their leadership.